And thank y'all for being here this afternoon. After lunch, feel free to take a little snooze. It will not hurt my feelings at all. So a couple things before we get started. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about living your best life with MS. And you may say, how does this lady standing up here know anything really about that? Well, first the first thing that I'm able to bring to the table is I've worked with folks that are diagnosed with MS for the past 14 and a half years now. First starting in a role as a case manager at Shepherd Center. My background is rehabilitation counseling, and so that's always been a passion of mine. But the real reason I feel like I'm able to stand up here and talk to you a little bit about some of these things about living your best life is because I'm a self-proclaimed neurotic, okay? So we're going to talk some today about perfectionism. We're going to talk some today about trying to have self-compassion. I said yesterday in our support group that I think when I sat down and started looking at these notes for today's talk, that honestly, no offense, but I think it may be more for me than y'all. So I think I need it more now than I have in a long time. So anyway, hopefully you'll be able to get something out of this too. So we're going to talk today again just about living your best life with MS. Oh, sorry, I've already messed it up. 1 second. Okay. All right, so what does it mean to live your best life? Before I started this presentation, I was able to speak with some persons living with MS, and I said, tell me what that means to you. What does it mean when someone says to you, are you living your best life? And these are the responses that I received. They said, Emily, I'm living an authentic life. I'm living a happy life. The life I choose is the one that I have chosen for myself, not that someone else has chosen for me. And it's a life where I can take chances. I thought that was a really cool one. So many times, people tell us, what does a best life look like? I know, we hear that every day from the media to our friends to our family are going to tell us what they think our best life should be. But really, it's going to look different for each and every one of us. And what does that mean? Also, I'm the fastest talking Southerner you will ever meet. So if you need me to slow down, just raise your hand and I will. All right, so today we're going to talk about just a few keys to our best life over the years and kind of what I've pulled together working with persons with MS. Focusing on self-awareness. This is one key that we can all take to have living our best life. Having that self-awareness, it's all about understanding what you need, and what are your desires? Where are your failings? What are our habits? All those things that it takes to make us tick in our lives. The more we know about ourselves, the more that we're going to be able to adapt in life. The more we pay attention to this, the more we know where our emotions come from, what drives ourselves in our daily life, the better we'll be able to understand and connect. I love this. The ultimate self-awareness example, always late, but worth the wait. I think that so many of us have the things that make us tick again and who we are. And sometimes we may see them as a failing or a shortcoming. But the more we're able to learn to be aware of those, set boundaries, set expectations up front, the better we are able to deal with that as we go. Again, self-awareness. We're able to adapt to change. With MS, or if you're living with any chronic illness or life in general, just the more you know about yourself is going to teach you, or the more aware you are with yourself, you're going to know, how am I better able to adapt to change? Life throws different curveballs my way. Paying attention to those emotions that we have and how they affect you. Why we do the things that we do. Anna, today we were talking about this. I was, again, being neurotic and changed the presentation 15 times today. And Anna, we were talking about self-awareness. And she said a great example of this would be an introvert and an extrovert. I was like, oh, that's a great example. So many of us, and it's really about where you get your recharge from. You can see me. Obviously, I'm someone that I love to be around people, and I love to make connections and make relationships. But it's funny because when it comes time for me to recharge, I need downtime. I need me time. But I think that half of the battle is us knowing those things about ourselves, because then you're able to know what to ask for. Another really cool way to learn more about yourself is, this may sound a little odd, but take a personality test, take a personality quiz. Have any of you ever heard of the color test by any chance? Okay. All my coworkers who decided to show up make me nervous. We've taken this at work, and I challenge you to do this. It's a really cool thing, even as a husband and wife, or a sister and a mom, or a mom, mom and a daughter, or whatever the relationship is, to get to know who you are so that you have that self-awareness. Again, we did this at work, and your personality is kind of based in these different buckets of colors. Well, I took it, and of course, my bucket was gold. Gold is, everything is black and white. You're much a perfectionist, which is not, the best thing in the world. But it was funny because I feel like since I took that quiz, I've always just thought, that's just a little, bothersome bit of my personality. But I feel like once I took that and really delved into it, I say, you know what? I'm able to give myself a little bit of a break. It's part of who I am. You get, I said one day, you get 95% awesome, but you got that 5%, that you got to deal with. So I think those are really cool things. If you ever get a chance, look up the color test, personality test. Oh, sorry, y'all. I keep hitting the wrong button. Self-awareness. When it comes to self-awareness, I really believe that we have two options. We can go with a growth mindset, or we can go with a fixed mindset. And sometimes it is so easy to go with that fixed mindset, just that, look, I am where I am in my life. I can't change things that I want to change. I'm limited to X, Y, Z. And it takes a lot of vulnerability and a lot of trust to say, you know what, I'm going to try to go on that growth mindset for a while. Challenges help me grow. It's sometimes, we hear that, in support groups and different meetings, or, you see that in movies where, the challenge is what helps someone grow. And it sounds so cliche. It's a hard thing, though, when you're really living in it. So, really taking those challenges and using them. Feedback, when you have constructive feedback, and you're able to receive that, or trying out something new. I'm someone, I know, at least speaking for me, that I'm a creature of habit a lot of times. I'm not someone that's going to want to go and try something new, just mostly out of the fear that I'm not going to be perfect at it, or I'm not going to do it just so. But I think opening up ourselves to that growth mindset is so important. So that's just something to think about too. Self-awareness. So what? You're going to see the so what slide in here a lot, and that's more of what does this matter to any of us? What does this matter to you living with a chronic illness? You living with you're serving as care partner to someone, or just being a human being in this world we live in today. What's the so what? I think it's important to know when we have a self-awareness, we're able to understand that we're going to have those good days and we're going to have those bad days. I don't think we give ourselves a lot of credit in that there are times where we just know. Like, you just know how you feel about something. And I think you need to be empowered. I want you to be empowered. That if you've got this feeling, to know that maybe that's enough, to sit with that feeling. And I said to my therapist one time, I was like, I've got this really good gut. She said, yes, but you also have anxiety. So it's hard to know which is which sometimes. But just the knowing, trust that you trust your gut. You know what's right for you. And again, having a better understanding of where you're coming from. So, like I said, that color test is a great example of a very actionable thing that you could do. It's really, again, I highly recommend it in family dynamics and family groups to do that. So we've got our self-awareness. Well, what's another key, that helps us to be the best we can be for ourselves? And that is practicing self-compassion. This is one, again, I know where I struggle, but we hear so much about self-esteem. I need to have good self-esteem. My self-esteem is great. But it's really, research is showing that it's even more important to have self-compassion, being able to believe that you are enough, that you are able to give yourself compassion when you need it. We're not always going to have that perfect day. We're not always going to do something the way that we feel that it should be done. But to have that compassion, to be able to forgive ourselves and be able to give ourselves grace is important. Let me see. So what is self-compassion? And I saw this little quote and I thought this was great. Self-compassion is the wisest, smartest version of yourself where you say, looking into your future, take care of me. And just giving yourself that promise that you will do that for yourself. So what? Self-compassion. So what? Why do we need this hokey pokey stuff, self-compassion? When we live with a chronic illness, be that MS, be that any other sort of chronic illness that really affects your day-to-day life, it can really cause us to give that self-blame at times. When an illness flares up, when you're going through an exacerbation, or you're just having one of those really bad days, you can go there in your head. If I were only strong enough, if I were only better, taking better care of myself, if I didn't overdo it last week when I had that big project due at work, or if I can't handle my stress level, well, of course, I'm having this flare, this active, my disease has progressed. But I think, again, that's where that self-compassion comes in, and being able to talk yourself through that. Another important component is maintaining that, some painful experiences, y'all, they're going to be part of our human condition. They are part of it. They are not, but that we're not isolated in that. And I think there's a strong connection, when you're able, like yesterday, even in the support group, just being in there for an hour, just is so cool to see, like, that connection, because it lets you know you're not alone. Again, be it MS, be it as a care partner for someone with MS, or another condition that, chronic illness that someone might have. Even though we may be in the throes of our own life and what we're experiencing, it's so cool to be able to look around a room and say, you know what, we're in this together, and people have my back. So what can we do with self-compassion as far as changing our critical self-talk? Because honestly, at the end of the day, when it comes to self-compassion, that is the golden ticket. If we can work on our self-talk, we have won the lottery. I'd say the first step is really watching the way that you are being self-critical. And so many of these things, I think yesterday I said in the group about being intentional, being very intentional. And some of these things you have to fake it until you make it. So with this self-talk is really stopping yourself and saying, you know what? I know right now what I'm doing. This is my self-talk, and it's negative, and we need to have a talk. I need to have a talk with myself, which I do regularly. But, and doing it from a place of kindness to yourself. Just, I know that you are trying to be there for me, self. I know this sounds a little hokey, but I know you're trying to be there for me, but this is not helpful. The conversation I'm having with myself right now, that is not helpful. And just asking yourself, at the end of the day, is this the way that you would speak to a friend? It's so cool, once we realize that once we're able to get to a point where we can accept ourselves for where we are, that's when we can actually make the changes that we want to make. I thought this was pretty cool, but there's always a balance. Even with self-compassion, we can go overboard, So I think something to remember on this as you work on self-talk and trying to kind of walk yourself through those different types of things is remember, I'm so bad about this, is I'll criticize myself for trying not to criticize myself, It's like I can't win. But it ebbs and flows, and you're going to have those great days where you're able to kind of go inward and be able to talk yourself down from some of those places and get back to that compassion. So just know when you hear, I'm not doing a good job at not talking, talking myself down. It's practice. All of this is really, really practice. Perfectionism. So this is another key that we need to talk about today. And this is a big one. I know this is something in my own personal life that I struggle with. And I know that I used to wear it as a badge. Like, I am a perfectionist. I try to get everything perfect. And then, going through a lot of therapy, doing a lot of reading, I realized, whoa, this is not serving me well like I think it is. I love this quote by Brene Brown. You will see a lot of Brene Brown quotes in here, but Brene Brown, how many are familiar with her and her research? Okay, good. I banged it into all their heads back there. But with Brene Brown, she is a social worker who is a PhD researcher in Austin, Texas, and she studies shame. She studies perfectionism and vulnerability. And I highly recommend, again, if you want to go out and check out her stuff, it is so good. But I love this quote: when perfectionism is driving, shame is riding shotgun, and fear is that annoying backseat driver. So just know that they all come together. You think I know, at least for me, I'll speak for me, but I think I'm being this perfectionist. I'm doing exactly like, there's something more going on with that. It's not just I'm trying to please everyone and I'm trying to be the best at this or that when it's outwardly looking. It's really about where is that coming from? And that's been something kind of cool to work on over the years. So perfectionism, what is it? Perfectionism can be considered the exaggerated fear of failure. So we live our lives in this state of high alert. Those of us who are perfectionists, we're constantly kind of looking out for any chance that there could be failure in any sort of form. I think a lot of times if we strive for perfectionism, we feel that any sort of mistake could be considered weakness. It might even be seen as a failure. This is, if it's not exactly perfect, then it's got to be the end. A lot of times with perfectionism, we really harp on criticism, an inner voice that kind of puts you down and says, you're not enough. We're finding fault with issues. And sometimes, folks that have this trait can really start to isolate themselves, because you get to a point where you feel like, if I'm not able to do it perfect, I'd rather just not do it at all, and I'll just hang out on my own. And people, a lot of times when you're in the grips of that perfectionism, I think it's really interesting because it can really show how you kind of put it on other people as well. So, we really see other people's flaws instead of their strengths. Defensiveness. A lot of times if you've got those perfectionistic overtones, you'll see that you can be kind of hard on others. But you do not like it when you're the one that's getting told what's right, what's wrong. Even constructive criticism can seem like a hard thing to someone who works through perfectionism. Okay. A lot of times when folks have perfectionism, they have what we call black and white thinking. I say all of the time, I am not someone who lives in gray. But I think, again, it's about knowing who you are. And having that self-talk. I have compassion most of the time for myself, that I know that I'm someone who I live on that black and white side. The gray is hard for me when it's, either right or wrong. I think a lot of things that we may hear, and I don't know if y'all relate to this, but probably more likely than not, how many times do you hear yourself say, I should do X, I should do Y, I must do this, I must do that, I cannot do that. I think trying to, again, with that self-talk, with those types of words, really thinking about that. I try to watch my shoulds. I try to watch my musts, because a lot of times you end up putting yourself in a box of feeling like you have to strive to that perfectionism. It's unrealistic to be perfect. I think that we desire for our lives so many times to be perfect, but it is so unobtainable many times. And just being able to realize that, recognize that, give ourselves the grace to know that it's okay not to be. And not, I think another thing to remember is when we live in this place of perfectionism, we really end up setting unrealistic standards for people that live with us or around us. And we end up hurting ourselves because we end up constantly feeling like we've been let down. So, I think it's really important to remember that and to know that the more we're able to forgive ourselves, the more of a break we're able to give ourselves, we're able to do the same for others in our lives. So I think that's a cool correlation there. With the research, again, Dr. Brown Renee says, I'm going to read this. What emerged for me in the data is that perfectionism is not about striving for excellence or healthy striving. It's a way of thinking and feeling that says this: if I look perfect, do it perfect, work perfect, and live perfect, I can avoid or minimize shame, blame, and judgment. I call perfectionism the 20-ton shield. We carry it around thinking it's going to protect us from being hurt, but it protects us from being seen. And, I know working with folks that live with MS, having my own, issues that I've dealt with in my life, this is so true. So many times we try to keep everything perfect that we can because we feel like if I can keep this lane perfect, then maybe they won't notice these other things that are going on. If I can keep this area of my life just perfect, or if I'm at work, I'm still working, and if I'm still working and I have this issue and I can keep that straight on and perfect, and no one knows that I'm having fatigue, no one knows I'm noticing the cognitive issues, that, it's a 20-ton shield, so many times. And it's hard to be vulnerable, right? Like, it's scary. It's so scary to step out and be vulnerable and ask for help. It can be a double-edged sword. This was really cool, because again, I think a lot of times about how I feel like I'm a perfectionist and I used to wear it as a badge of honor. Now I want to think more about healthy striving is self-focused. So ask yourself, if you see yourself going down some road where it's like, is this healthy? This, expectation I have, this rule I'm setting for myself. I think it's important to be able to pause and say, you know what? Is this focusing on how I can improve, or is this more focused on what they will think? And that was a big eye-opener for me to kind of look at it in those two different buckets, to be able to say, what is this really about? So I thought that was something that was pretty cool. So what do we do? And I'm sorry, I know I've rambled a little bit about perfectionism. It's definitely I just feel like it's one of those things that really can get in the way of us living our best lives. But, what do we do? One thing that we can do is what they call name the fear tactic. And I do this, I catch myself doing this a lot. So that's the what if, So I'm going into a meeting and I'm worried that I'm not going to remember everything that I had last week that, my boss asked me to remember, to present. I go down the what ifs. What if it's not perfect? Okay, well, they may be disappointed. Okay, what if they are disappointed? Well, we may discuss it. I'm not going to probably lose my job over it. Okay, well, if you discuss it, what if you discuss it? Or my family's coming to dinner and I'm exhausted. It's been a long week. I've seen my neurologist once. I've had to go for an infusion. And I just think all I can handle this time is going to be lasagna out of the freezer. Okay, what if we have lasagna out of the freezer? Seriously. But I know that it's not always that easy. So I think being able to have those talks with yourself and asking the what if game, that's one, write that one down and keep that one in your pocket. Because a lot of times they do thrive on irrationality. So being able to dig into them and take them bite at a time And I just want to say, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I know. Y'all live this, breathe this every day. But, and you've had to live with those what ifs, and and so I just want you to know that as we talk through this, I know that you get this stuff. Is that, I thought that was me. Okay, good. Like, Lord, the thing's about to implode. That's telling me. And scene, Emily, we're done. Okay.
I can't believe it's working.
Then what? Then what? Again, that just goes with that fear tactic. If this, then what? And you just kind of look at that and follow that along. And just practicing a new mantra. Somebody said this at lunch today. Chris, I think, said it. Good enough. It's good enough. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's actually my presentation, but oh my gosh, I can't believe somebody would actually think that. But it's true, my sister's someone who's very laid back with life, and I'm actually going to see her in 2 days in St. John, let's put it that way. But she's like, why do you care? Why do you care so much what everyone thinks? Why do you feel like you have to please everyone? And it's a great question. It's one that I'll probably never really be able to answer, but sometimes good enough can just be good enough. The lasagna from the freezer can be good enough. Gifts of Imperfection. This is a book, if you have not read this book, I highly recommend it. But yes, I am imperfect and vulnerable and sometimes afraid, but that does not change the truth that I'm also brave and worthy of love and belonging. So the so whats. Why do we feel we have to be perfect? I may be the only person in this room, I seriously doubt it, who has that struggle. But you know what? We may never know. I tell my therapist, I'm sure it goes back to childhood. It always does. But, but we may not know where that flip gets switched, or that switch gets flipped. But treat yourself as you would your friend. If a friend reaches out to you in the same situation, what would you feel? Again, going back to the lasagna, if your friend pulled out a lasagna after seeing the neurologist and getting their infusion that day, you wouldn't think two things about it. This was a good little tip, too, to kind of put into our pockets when we leave. But write down a list of the name of people whose opinions matter to you. And really, that gets down to the nitty-gritty. There's so many times we try to please everyone else, or we don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. We want to make everybody feel comfortable. Write down the names of the people whose opinions really matter to you. To make the cut, they have to love you for your strengths and your struggles. And that's really, really an eye-opening exercise. So the next little, as you can tell, I'm a little obsessed with talking about perfectionism, but at the end, I was talking through it with Anna today, and she said, I think perfection is a luxury. Now, I almost had a heart attack, because that's all that's like the biggest life work that I've done in my own life. So, I do feel like sometimes if you don't really struggle from that side of things, of trying to make people happy and trying to make sure that you're, putting on the best front you can, it can seem like that. And if you're really facing, like, man, I know that y'all have faced obstacles that I could never know about, so it's kind of like, really, Emily, why do you care if, why would I care if it's perfect or not? So it can seem like a luxury at times too. Keeping it in perspective. I love this, and then we'll move on, I promise. But this was, I don't know if y'all have ever heard of Sarah Blakely. Have you heard of Spanx? Okay, good, got it. Exactly. I can't fit in a Spanx, but they've got them. And my dad, she said, I thought this was so cool. She said her dad used to ask her brother and her at the dinner table every night, what they had failed at that week, or during the week. And he would say, she would say, oh, I tried out for chorus and I was terrible. And he would give her a high five. And I thought, wow, that is so powerful, because that way, we're able to see it's okay to live through things that we're not perfect at. It's okay, to have areas where we struggle. And so I thought that was a really neat thing. So some additional keys to living our best lives. Make moments meaningful. So don't just do things for the sake of doing them. Again, that goes back to always wanting to, heck, half the time we may not even want to do the things that we're asked to do, but we may feel like we have to. Evaluate what you're doing and only do it if you feel like there's some meaning behind it. I love this, as you can tell with all my exclamation points, but don't be afraid to quit the things that don't serve your path and are not true to you. I mean, how many times have you started something and like, okay, this is the thing. This is going to be my thing. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to be so great at this thing. And you get into it and you're like, I don't like this. I'm lying to myself if I'm even pretending like it. So I think it's okay to give yourself permission just to say no. Even with my kids, one will want to do basketball and then she'll decide she doesn't. And it may be horrible, but I'm like, that's okay. You can change your mind. I think that's something that we have to remember is it's okay to change our minds. And we'll come back to this question because I know we're way at the end, but what are some things that you do that add meaning to your life? So, the bad news is time flies. The good news is we are the pilot. For the most part, we are the pilot. And some good news with all of this is we don't have to do this all alone. We were never meant to do this life alone. So spending time with those who count. Again, if you're someone who enjoys being with others, spending time with others, you can really gain a lot of energy from this. Having the tools and support to sustain that positive outlook a lot of times will come from others and help you have that resilience. Having your strong network. Again, even yesterday, just for the hour in the group we had, it was just so cool to feel the energy and to be able to see that, you can make connections with people and know that you're not alone and laugh about, oh my gosh, I said I was on the cruise with the troublemakers last time, like it's just fun. And exactly. And it lets you make those connections because y'all life it really is. At the end of the day, it's about the connections that we've made. Family and family are so important. I think so many of us have great family support. Many of us not so much, and that's okay. And sometimes it changes, it ebbs and flows, But I do think that having your friends as well that support you and are there, and that can connect with you and share those life experiences and give you some solutions. Somebody that, again, that short list that care about you and you trust is very important. I thought this was pretty funny. I smile because you're my family. I laugh because there's nothing you can do about it. That's hilarious. I think that's how my family feels about me. So another area we'll talk about is gratitude. So again, you're hearing all the buzzwords today. I took all the buzzwords and put them in one presentation, but from all of this. But gratitude, this is a real deal. So much research has been done. And it has been shown that gratitude really it can predict lowering depression and chronic illnesses, okay? So if you're living with a chronic illness and you practice gratitude, because it is an intentional thing. It is one of those things I keep saying, we have to fake it till we make it. So there was a study that was done and they defined gratitude. I thought this was a great definition as a life orientation towards noticing the positive in life, including both thankfulness to others and a wider sense of appreciation for what one has. So that's a pretty good definition of what gratitude is. And they talked about some really cool takeaways from that research. The definition it in no way precludes that you have anger and sorrow. You can be so grateful and still be mad. You can be so grateful and still be so sad. They're not mutually exclusive of one another. But what I do believe is that having that gratitude or practicing that gratitude, and again, y'all, this is a conscious decision, the stuff we're talking about. It does not just come to you. But it will help you. Maybe that anger will be a little less. Maybe the sorrow kind of subsides a little less. To be thankful for what one possesses does not mean that you can't feel grief, for what you've lost. In life, in all circumstances in life, there are going to be times when, we experience loss. And you have grief, as you move on to different times in your life. If you experience a different symptom that you've never had before, and you're like, what is this? What is going on? It doesn't take away that you can't feel that grief. And again, it doesn't remove mourning, but it places it in a context so that you're able to say, yeah, I have this going on. I'm not happy about it. Pretty dang angry about it, actually, if we get real. And here are the things I'm grateful for. Definitely not substituting one for the other, but with gratitude, again, so much research has been done in this area. And I thought these were some really cool research-based reasons for practicing it. It can bring happiness. This is absolutely, and I've got some information at the bottom of where I've got these, but it reduces anxiety and depression, which we talked about earlier. It's good for our bodies. It's, grateful people, research shows they sleep better. You can strengthen your relationships, and it helps you to pay it forward. I think a lot of times if we're able to work on our gratitude, thankful for what we have and what we can give, it really does make, a difference there in paying that forward. Okay, all of that's great, but how do I do that? Again, all of this stuff that we're talking about is so action driven, because I'm sitting here now thinking, oh my gosh, of course I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to up my gratitude practice. I need to be doing more. But here's some very concrete things that you can do. They may sound a little hokey, but just go with me on some of these. So, journaling. You can journal. I have a friend who every morning she wakes up, she writes 3 things down in her journal that she's grateful for. She doesn't make a movie out of it. She doesn't make a scene. She writes it down. She goes along her day. And that has honestly, she says, has really been something to help her with her mood, and she struggles with anxiety as well. A gratitude jar. So again, you write a couple of things down you're grateful for, you throw them in a jar. When you're needing a pickup, a week later, when you've just spilled the tea everywhere and all the laundry is piled up, and you're just, you've got to go to physical therapy and occupational therapy, which is wonderful, Ian. We love going. But it's on your to-do list and you've got all this stuff. You can grab one of those out of that jar and take a peek. I read something about a gratitude rock. Very simple. Grab your rock, one that you like, you find it on the ground, you keep it, you put it where you need it. And when you look at it, you think about it. You think about what you're grateful for. Writing letters, emails, visiting, I think different things like that. Of course, meditation is an amazing way to work in gratitude. This one was pretty funny. I just had to put this up here because it made me laugh. But the can of beans. There's this gratitude practice where you can get a can of beans and eat it for your meal. That's all you have. One can of beans, like plain beans. And then you're grateful for the other food you have. Okay, so let's be real. I won't ever be doing the can of bean exercise, but I just thought that was pretty interesting. I had to share that one. So, with all of this, it's all about taking care of all of us, taking care of all of you. I love this. I thought I was losing weight, but it turned out my sweatpants had come untied. Yep, that's about it these days. That's about it. So really, looking at everything, it really is up to us. I think one of the biggest things to remember is you can always change your mind. You always have the option to change your mind in different situations. I think that's one of the most empowering things to know. Can you change your mind about having this diagnosis? Nope, can't do it. Sorry, absolutely. But can you change your mind on different things that might affect you? Absolutely, and the way you look at those. Work with your healthcare team. They'll problem solve with you, help you respond to your disease in ways that work for you. Make decisions about when to seek help or, what treatments again are best. Reach out for help when you need it. I think we so many times get so prideful, don't want to ask for help, but please know that people are there, your medical provider, MSFocus, your family, your friends, you've got a good support system out there. And if not, make sure to give me a buzz because I will be that for you. I I love this quote. I'm going to read it and then I promise I'm going to hush. But your time is limited. Don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is the result of living other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown your own inner voice. And most importantly, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. And that was by Steve Jobs, who I think is pretty good at this topic. So, again, I'm a fast-talking Southerner. I'm actually done with the presentation part, but I would love any questions, comments. This is probably definitely more of a, again, I'm no expert in this field, but I think it's, except when I live in it. But if you have comments that you want to make to the group, I would love to hear those as well. Oh, well, thank you so much. Thank you.